Hey everybody and welcome to another video. Today I'm doing my August wrap up. It has been a while, it's already October, so I don't know how much I will actually be able to tell you guys about these books. So potentially this is going to be a really fast one because I will just be like, okay, this is the book that I read. This is why I read it. Well, we'll see. I'll go through more or less chronologically of where, like how, what I read, what are words. But I will put it on the screen because I didn't look into it beforehand. I'll put it on the screen how many books I had left at the beginning of the month, which also means I don't at this point in time know how many books I was left with at the end of the month. But let's just get going into it. So the month of August was a month in which I was also reading for the Olympicsathon, which is a readathon hosted by Clumsy Charlotte. I will have her channel linked below. And for that I chose a few books that like combined multiple of the prompts, so like they were translated from different parts of the world, and then they fulfilled other prompts as well in different languages. That's the translated part, so I don't fully remember all of the reasons anymore, all the things that they had to fulfill, but that's why I also had quite some like random stuff in here. So the first one is like that, which is Temple Alley Samir. I don't remember who the author is by, and I barely remember anything of what this book was about. So I think we'll have to take Storygraph with us here to help us out at least a little bit. So Temple Alley Summer by Sachiko Kashiwaba, translated by Avery Fisher Udagawa. So what is it about? It is a fantastical, mysterious adventure filled with the living dead, a magical pearl, and a suspiciously nosy black cat named Kiriko. Kazu knows something odd is going on when he sees a girl in a white kimono sneak out of his house in the middle of the night. Was he dreaming? Did he see ghosts? Things get even stranger when he shows up to school the next day to see the very same figure sitting in his classroom. No one else thinks it's weird, and even though Kazu doesn't remember ever seeing her before, they all seem convinced that the ghost girl Akari has been their friend for years. When Kazu's summer project to learn about Kimyo Temple draws the meddling attention of his mysterious neighbor Mrs. Minakama and his secretive new classmate Akari, Kazu soon learns that not everything is as it seems in his hometown. It does kinda ring a bell. I do kinda remember this concept now, but I really don't remember anything else of it. I also gave it 3 stars, so it was just like middle of the road. I remember it being wholesome and like an easy read, but I don't remember any of the specifics, which also says something, I guess. But the same can be said for the next one, which I read for that, which is French Windows by Antoine Lorrain, which I gave 3.75 stars to, and this one is more, it has like a rear window concept. So Natalia, a young photographer, is seeing as a therapist. Having accidentally photographed a murder, she finds that she can no longer do her job. Instead, Dr. Faber suggests that she write about the people she observes in the building opposite, starting with the actor turned YouTube live coach on the ground floor and going all the way up to the 5th floor. Natalia creates vivid accounts of the lives of each of her neighbors. Are her stories real or imaginary? With each session, the doctor and his mysterious patient will get closer to the truth. But as they approach the final floor of the building, Natalia's stories take a truly deadly turn. Yeah, so indeed, this one has like different shorter stories within it, in which we are kind of zooming in on these characters as if the story is told from their perspective, but it's actually Natalia's imagination of them. But I've forgotten the actual conclusion. Who was the killer? I don't. This confirms the fact that, you know, I always say that I don't like murder mysteries because I don't care about who did it, and the fact that I cannot even remember like 2 months later means that clearly I really don't. And then we get really sucked into a series. So these books I can talk about, but I will only talk about the one, of course, because I read multiple in them. But so I started the Plated Prisoner series by Raven Kennedy. This is a Midas retelling. It is a fantasy romance, and I read the first 4, I want to say, within the month of August. Yes, it seems like it. So I read Guild, Glint, Gleam and Glow, and I read them one after the other, more or less. I basically read 3 of them on the same day because I was really so sucked into it. And I will admit that there was some diagonal reading there, especially with the first book. And I feel like it really grabbed my attention in the second one, but even within the first one, like, you know, I wouldn't have continued it. There wasn't nothing there to catch my attention. But now I'm like, oh, how did that first book convince me? Because the first book I cannot talk about because of spoilers, but the first book is a little bit of a it stands apart a little bit of the rest of the series. But so in this series we are looking at this girl called, oh, I already forgotten her name, Ayla? Something like that? What is your name? Why is this description written from first perspective? Alright, fine. Don't give me her name then. So our protagonist, Aura? Something with an A. Our protagonist is basically living in a gilded cage. She is being kept in a cage by King Midas, but it is a cage of her own choosing. So she chose this, and basically she has always been felt like protected and treasured by Midas because of the way that he treats her, because of the special standing that she has within his court. But things are about to happen that kind of make her question his loyalty to her. So yeah, fantasy romance, as I indicated, it also has fae elements to it, but that will come later. I mean, it's already implied within, I think it's already mentioned, like in terms of the world building, that there used to be fae within this world and stuff like that. But the fae do become bigger part of the storyline starting from the second book already. But yeah, in the first one it's just part of the world building, but you don't really have much mention of fae yet or anything like that. But yeah, these ones, they just like really suck me in, and out of these 4 I would say I mainly enjoy probably Glint and Gleam. Right, because which one is yeah, Glow is the one that I also really enjoy, but it took me longer and I lost. That's the one that kind of made me lose momentum. And then Gold, which is the 5th one in it, and I finished it in September. That's one where I really struggled more with the momentum, so which is why I also didn't finish within the month of August, because I finished these ones like on the 4th, the 4th, the 4th, the 7th, and then the rest of the month I was still reading. I was reading Gold the entire time, but it was just like it had slunk down in my attention in any case. Next thing that I finished was James by Percival Everett. This is the only book of the Booker Prize that I will have read. I had the audiobook available to me through Storytel, and I really enjoyed this one. This is a retelling of Huckleberry Finn, and I will say it's been so long since I read Huckleberry Finn that for me I was unable to tell you which parts like really corresponds to parts within Huckleberry Finn itself. I'm assuming that all the parts in which James is together with Huck are corresponding to what happens within the pages of Huckleberry Finn, but there are a few moments in time in which James is on his own, and those obviously have to have been imagined in. And I really enjoyed this book, and I especially enjoyed that it shows James as a character who is basically like playing a part whenever he's around white people, a part that he sometimes kind of drops at least a little bit in the presence of Huckleberry, and he definitely drops it in the presence of other black slaves. But so he's basically also like training his kids in that way, like to speak in a way that white men expect black slaves to speak, for example, to pretend not to know things that white men would feel black slaves have no right to know or no business knowing, or that maybe the white men themselves don't really know that well, and so they would feel like wounded in their pride if they found out that a black person knows these things or not. And throughout the book we also occasionally get these sort of like inner monologues in which he talks to philosophers of the age, and he's basically like having a dialogue between them about their thoughts on slavery and his reaction to that. I thought it was really well done. I really enjoyed it a lot. I thought it was a really good one, and I don't really have more to say about that because, you know, like, who am I to say anything about a book like this? You know, I'm a white woman who has no understanding of the reality of this concept, but from my perspective, reading it, I found it to be really interesting and enriching. Then we have two books that I DNF'd. So these are for the Olympicsathon again. So we have The Happy Marriage by Tahar Ben Jaloun, which is about a couple in which one of them is disabled or becomes disabled. I believe it's the man who becomes disabled, right? Yeah. So the husband has been paralyzed due to stroke, and it says here also that in the background legal reforms are about to change women's rights forever. But I will say I had to give this one up because I just didn't get along with it. I feel like if we would have had the woman's perspective first, it might have been easier, but the man's perspective, it was just too difficult to read from. He was not in a happy place, and it wasn't even, it didn't go into his physical state all that much neither, which is what I thought was going to be interesting, was going to look at him feeling a certain way, feeling maybe like a loss of power as a consequence of the paralyzation, and feeling like he was losing more and more of that power when women are like getting more power or something like that. And probably that is what the book ends up doing, but I just couldn't stick with it. I didn't finish the man's perspective, even though I tried to push through it a little bit more, because I was like, just finish the man's perspective to get to the woman's perspective. But in the end I just decided that this one wasn't for me. The writing style didn't work for me. And then we have Two Sherpas by Sebastian Martinez Daniel, which honest to God I don't even remember when I've DNF'd it, how far along in I was, or why I DNF'd it. So this is a book by a Latin American author, and it talks about two Sherpas who are accompanying like white people as they climb. I'm thinking it's just Mount Everest, right? And then they find one of them like lying dead on a ledge somewhere. But honest to God, I really don't remember. I assume I just couldn't get into the writing style, but I actually really have no memories of or what took place within the pages that I read in this one, so do with that what you wish. Next up we have The Dead Cat Tail Assassins by P. Jelly Clark. So this is a relatively short novel, maybe a little bit longer than most of his novellas. In this one we are looking at a woman who is part of the Dead Cat Tail Assassins group. So basically they are assassins sent out for assignments. And so basically she is set on an assignment that turns out impossible to fulfill. However, it is part of their vows that they have to complete every assignment, and so if she doesn't, then that also creates huge problems for her, so she has to find a way to kind of fulfill the bargains, or I guess prove that the contract was unjust to begin with. I enjoyed this one, but it is also one that to some extent has kind of already left my mind. I just remember the timeline-y business that is involved within this one. I always like those types of warped timeline stuff, so I enjoyed that as well within this book. But it is what it is. It was enjoyable, but forgettable as well. Next up I read Masterful Cat is Depressed Again Today, Volume 2. These are mangas that are basically about this young woman who at one point in time she found like a kitten out on the street and took it home, and then the kitten grew to be like massively large, and he's basically like taking care of her, like cooking for her, making sure that she does the things that she has to do, basically just like become a huge mama character. So there's not really much I can say about Volume 2, like it's more of the same. I enjoyed it, but it's also like nothing that stands out neither. And then we have The Saturday Morning Park Run by Jules Wake, which I really enjoyed, gave 5 stars too. So this is I would say it's probably a romance, but it's actually contemporary in my opinion. There is a romance in there, but it doesn't take as much of the page count as I feel like it does in what most people consider a romance. So I think it's more of a getting your act together type of book. So our protagonist is sort of like this hustling young woman who is always commuting to London to do her job there, and she's just living a busy lifestyle, and as a consequence doesn't really take much time for herself or her family members, friends, or anything like that. And then one day she is written home with stress by her doctor, and it just kind of goes to her whole world and purpose kind of crashing down as she is left to figure out who she is, what she wants in life all over again. And I really enjoyed this one a whole ton. Thought it was super wholesome. Loved the thematics of it and like the way the things that happen in it. There's also a sort of like long-standing problem with her and her sister and her sister's kids, and she has to take care of her sister's kids for a long time, even though she, you know, hasn't been in that position or hasn't chosen that life path. And I also really enjoyed the storyline between her and the kids. And then the reference to the title is that she kind of takes up running at that point in time, and a very insistent old elderly lady in the park kind of gets her on the track to organize a park run in the park herself. And so these storylines kind of come together, kind of rebuild the character from the grounds up, and I really enjoyed it. And I did finish Gold by Raven Kennedy apparently within this month, so I finished that. But so after the success of the Saturday morning park run, I then also went into the Wednesday morning wild swim, which I didn't like as much. The Wednesday morning wild swim is just like, it's the same series, but there isn't really a connection between them. I think maybe there's some overlap with characters. Yeah, I think there's like some overlap with characters, and it's like set in the same town, I think, like, but aside from that, that's the only sort of real connection between these two. And it was enjoyable, but I feel like it's centered more on the romance, or I was more invested in the romance in this one than in anything else that was happening. I wouldn't say I was more invested in this romance than in the romance of the Saturday morning park run. I was definitely more invested in that romance. But in this one, there was more, in the Saturday morning park run, there was more for me to enjoy. Whereas in the Wednesday morning wild swim, there was just a romance, I felt like, and there wasn't as much of a sort of like character evolution thing going on, even though there is something there, but you know, it didn't work as well for me. So this one was more about like a woman who is like very sort of like chaotic and stuff like that, who isn't able to hold down a job, who finds a job in the local sort of like a very nice establishment in town where that now has a new owner, and he has basically kind of closed off the estate to everybody there, and people are not allowed to swim there even though they were swimming there before. And so she is now hired by him, and of course between those two romance ensues. But so yeah, that was it for August. I read a total of 14 books. As you will have noticed, none of them were physical books, but that's because in the second half of August I started my Every Book All at Once project, and so I was starting a ton of books, but I wasn't actually finishing any of them. But so yeah, that hopefully was different in the month of September. I don't know, as I indicated in the beginning, where I kind of left things off at the end of August, but we will see that on the screen. I will have that. I actually think I ended up with more books because, as indicated, no physical book got removed from my shelves during this month, and I did add some books to it, so I'm pretty sure it ended up rising through the month of August. So not a good thing, but yeah, let's hope that we can get things down a little bit further. And this definitely explains to me in part how the TBR has grown so much, because there was a full month in which I reduced it by nothing. So, but yeah, let me know what you read. Well, I wouldn't say what you read in August because that's too long ago or so. Like, maybe if you still have the stats, what was your favorite read for the month of August? Have you read any of these books? And what are you currently reading and enjoying? But so yeah, let's leave it off here. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and see you guys for the next one. Bye!